that had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. Their empire stretched across 17 conquered worlds, each one taken through careful planning and brutal force. They were tall creatures, standing nearly 8 feet high, with dark skin that looked like stone and 4 eyes that glowed a soft yellow in the darkness. Their claws could cut through metal. Their ships were fast and deadly. No species had ever beaten them in war. Commander Al stood on the bridge of his warship, the Silent Hunter, and watched the human vessel drift slowly through the empty space of the outer reaches. It was a colony ship, large and round, built more for comfort than for battle. His scanners told him there were 300 humans inside, along with supplies, equipment, and everything they needed to start a new life on a distant planet. They would never reach that planet. "Commander," said his lieutenant, a younger named N, "the human ship has no weapons, no shields. They are asking us to identify ourselves." Al made a sound like rocks grinding together. It was the way of laughing. "Tell them nothing. Prepare the boarding party." He had heard stories about humans. They were a young species, only recently arrived on the galactic stage. They were soft, emotional, and weak. They cried when they were sad. They hugged each other when they were happy. They made art and music and spent their time on things that had no practical value. They found them disgusting. But they also found them useful. Humans made good slaves. They were clever enough to do complex work but too weak to fight back. Their colony ships, traveling alone through empty space, were easy targets. The boarding was quick and simple. The humans had no soldiers, no weapons, nothing to stop the warriors from cutting through the airlock and flooding into their ship. Within 20 minutes, all 300 colonists had been gathered in the main cargo bay. They sat on the floor in groups, holding each other, some crying, some just staring with empty eyes. Al walked among them, his heavy boots making the floor shake with each step. He studied their faces, looking for the one in charge. Humans always had leaders. They could not function without someone telling them what to do. He found her standing near the front of the group. She was a tall woman with dark skin and short hair. She wore a simple uniform with a captain's symbol on her chest. Her name, he would later learn, was Sarah. She did not cry. She did not beg. She just stood there, watching him with eyes that showed no fear. "You are the leader," Al said. His translator turned his grinding voice into words the humans could understand. "I am the captain of this ship," she said. "These people are under my protection." Al made his grinding laugh again. "Your protection means nothing now. You belong to the Empire, but we can make this easy for you. Give me the navigational data for your colony worlds, and I will make sure your people are treated well." Captain said nothing. "I see," Al said. "You need motivation." He turned and looked at the crowd of humans. His 4 eyes moved slowly, searching. He was looking for something specific, something that would break the captain's will. He found it. Near the back of the group, a small girl sat with her mother. She was young, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, with curly black hair and wide brown eyes. She was holding a stuffed rabbit, pressing it tight against her chest. Her mother had her arms wrapped around her, trying to shield her from the sight of the alien soldiers. Al walked toward them. The crowd of humans parted, moving away from him like water flowing around a stone. When he reached the girl, he reached down with one clawed hand and grabbed her arm. The girl screamed. Her mother screamed too, trying to hold on to her daughter, but a soldier knocked her back with one blow. The girl struggled and kicked, but Al lifted her easily, carrying her back to the front of the room like she weighed nothing at all. "Myra," the mother screamed, "give me back my daughter." So the child's name was Myra. Al held her up where everyone could see. She was still holding her stuffed rabbit, still crying, still calling for her mother. "You have 1 hour," Al announced to the room. "Give me the navigational codes or I will make an example of this offspring. I will show you what happens to those who resist the Empire." He expected the captain to break immediately. He expected her to fall to her knees and beg for the child's life. That was what happened on other worlds. The threat of harm to young ones always worked. It was a weakness shared by every species he had ever conquered. But Captain did not break. She did not beg. Instead, she did something that confused him. She smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a predator makes before it strikes. It was the kind of smile that said, "You have made a terrible mistake." "Lieutenant," she said quietly to a young man standing beside her, "go to the communications room. Send message Alpha 7 on the emergency beacon. Include our exact coordinates." The lieutenant moved immediately, slipping through the crowd toward a side door. The guards did not stop him. They did not think a single human could be a threat. "What message?" Al demanded. "What did you tell him to send?" Captain looked at him with those fearless eyes. "Just 2 words," she said. "Child taken." Al did not understand. What did those words mean? What could 2 simple words possibly do? He would learn soon enough. What Al did not know, what no species in the galaxy had yet learned, was that humans were not what they appeared to be. Yes, they were soft. Yes, they were emotional. Yes, they cried and hugged and made art that served no practical purpose. But underneath all of that, buried deep in their biology, was something ancient and dangerous. Something that had kept their species alive through millions of years of evolution on a deadly world. Something that slept most of the time, hidden beneath their gentle nature, waiting. It was the instinct to protect their young. On Earth, human parents had lifted cars off their trapped children. They had fought off wild animals with their bare hands. They had walked through fire, swum through floods, and faced certain death without hesitation, all to save a child. It was not bravery. It was not choice. It was programming written into their very cells, older than language, older than fire, older than humanity itself. And when that programming activated, when that ancient instinct woke up, humans did not negotiate. They did not bargain. They did not think about the cost or the risk or the odds of success. They just acted. Across the outer reaches, on ships and stations and colonies spread across 50 light-years of space, the message arrived. 2 words followed by coordinates. Child taken. And one by one, humans stopped what they were doing. They put down their tools. They left their meals unfinished. They turned their ships around. They were coming. The first ship arrived 6 hours later. It was a mining vessel called the Iron Promise, a big ugly thing covered in drills and cargo containers. It was not a warship. It had no weapons, no armor, nothing that should have made it a threat. But it came anyway, dropping out of faster-than-light travel so close to the cruiser that the shockwave made both ships shake. "What is this?" Al demanded, staring at his tactical display. "Where did that ship come from?" "Unknown, Commander," said N. "It appears to be a civilian mining vessel. They are hailing us." "Ignore them, they are nothing." But before N could respond, another ship arrived, then another, then 3 more at once. Al watched his display with growing confusion. The ships were arriving from all directions, appearing out of nowhere, surrounding his cruiser in an ever-tightening ring. Most of them were civilian vessels, cargo haulers and passenger ships and scientific research stations. None of them looked like they belonged in a battle. But they kept coming. A medical transport arrived, its hull marked with the symbol of healing. Its crew of doctors and nurses stood at the windows, watching the cruiser. A luxury liner came next, a beautiful ship designed for rich tourists to see the wonders of space. Its passengers, hundreds of them, had voted to change course the moment they heard the message. A construction barge arrived, its massive cranes and welding arms folded against its sides. A prison transport arrived, its guards standing ready. A school ship arrived, carrying teachers and students who had been on an educational trip to see a distant nebula. They all came. "Commander," N said, his voice becoming uncertain, "I am counting 47 human vessels. More are arriving every hour." 47, Al could not believe it. Where are they all coming from? Everywhere, Commander. They are coming from everywhere. Down in the cargo bay, Captain heard the news from her lieutenant, who had been watching through a small window. She looked at Al, who still held little Myra in his clawed hand, and her smile grew wider. "Do you understand now?" she asked quietly. "Do you understand what you have done?" Al did not answer. He was too busy watching his tactical display, watching more and more human ships appear out of the darkness of space. Then the warships arrived. The Earth Navy had 3 vessels in the sector, all of them fast attack cruisers designed for exactly this kind of situation. They came in formation, their weapons already powered, their shields already raised. They did not slow down. They did not hesitate. Admiral Way sat in the command chair of the lead ship, the Righteous Fury. He was an old man, his hair white and his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and his hands were steady. When he saw the cruiser surrounded by civilian ships, he understood exactly what had happened. "Open a channel to the alien vessel," he said. "Channel open, Admiral." Admiral leaned forward in his chair. His voice was calm, almost gentle, like a grandfather talking to a child who had done something wrong. "Vessel," he said, "this is Admiral Way of the Earth Navy. We have received a message that you have taken a human child. You will return her to us unharmed. You have 10 minutes to comply." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. It was no longer gentle. It was cold and hard like steel. "There will be no negotiation. There will be no second warning." On the bridge of the Silent Hunter, Al heard the message and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. His species called it the cold feeling. Other species called it fear. "They are bluffing," N said, but his voice shook. "They would not risk their own colonists. The colony ship is still attached to us. If they fire, they will kill their own people." Al looked at his lieutenant. He wanted to believe him. He wanted to believe that the humans would be rational, that they would think about the risks, that they would try to negotiate. But then he looked at his tactical display again. He saw 53 human ships now, more arriving every minute. He saw mining vessels and passenger ships and school ships, all of them here, all of them ready to fight. They had dropped everything to come here. They had risked everything to reach this place. For one child. "Commander," said another officer, "the human warships are targeting our engines." "Raise shields," Al ordered. "Prepare to." The first shot hit them before he could finish speaking. It was a precise strike, exactly targeted to disable their engines without destroying the ship. The Silent Hunter shuddered and groaned as its main drive exploded. Emergency lights came on, bathing everything in red. Alarms screamed throughout the vessel. "Engine room destroyed," someone shouted. "We are dead in space." Al stared at his display in shock. They had actually done it. They had actually fired on him. He looked down at the child still in his hand, still crying, still calling for her mother, and he began to understand. They were not bluffing. Admiral's voice came over the communication system again. "Your engines are gone. Your weapons will be next. Then your shields. You have 5 minutes left. Return the child." "We have 300 human hostages," Al shouted back. "If you attack us, they will die." There was a pause. When Admiral spoke again, his voice was quiet. "They know the risks. They accepted them the moment they became human. Every person in that cargo bay would give their life to save that child, and they would do it gladly. Can you say the same about your crew?" Al could not answer. "4 minutes," the Admiral said. The crew looked at their commander. They were warriors trained to fight and die for their empire. But they had never faced anything like this. They had never faced an enemy who would sacrifice everything, risk everything, destroy everything for a single child. "Commander," N said slowly, "perhaps we should." The second shot hit their weapons array. Explosions ripped through the ship. More alarms, more screaming, more red lights. 3 minutes, said Admiral. "Commander," one of the officers screamed. "The civilian ships, they are moving." Al looked at his tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. The civilian ships, the mining vessels and cargo haulers and passenger liners, were moving toward his cruiser. They were not attacking. They were not firing weapons. They were positioning themselves to board. The Iron Promise, the mining ship that had arrived first, was leading them. Its captain, a woman named who had spent 30 years digging rocks out of asteroids, had a cutting torch in one hand and a metal pipe in the other. Behind her stood 50 miners, all carrying whatever they could find: wrenches, drills, pieces of broken equipment. They were not soldiers, they had no training, they had no weapons designed for combat, but they were coming anyway. "They are insane," N whispered. "They are all insane." "No," Al said slowly, finally understanding. "They are parents." The medical ship had positioned itself near the colony ship, ready to treat the wounded. Its doctors stood waiting, their instruments prepared, their faces grim. The school ship had evacuated its children to a safe distance, and its teachers had armed themselves with whatever they could find. Everyone was ready, everyone was willing. 2 minutes, Admiral said. Al looked at the child in his hand. She had stopped crying. She was just looking at him now, her small face streaked with tears, her stuffed rabbit still clutched against her chest. She was so small, so fragile, so easily broken. And for her, an entire species had gone to war. "Commander," N said urgently, "we must decide now." Al closed his 4 eyes. He thought about his empire, about his mission, about everything he had been taught about strength and weakness and conquest. He thought about the humans, those soft, emotional creatures who cried and hugged and made useless art. He had been so wrong about them. "Open the cargo bay doors," he said quietly. "Let them come." The boarding was not gentle. Human Marines entered the cruiser through multiple airlocks at once, moving in tight formations through the dark corridors. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that glowed with deadly light. They did not shout or scream or show any emotion at all. They were completely silent, completely focused, completely unstoppable. The warriors who tried to resist were taken down within seconds. The Marines moved through them like water through rocks, flowing around any obstacle, never stopping, never slowing. They had one purpose, one goal, one mission: find the child. The civilians came behind the Marines. The miners from the Iron Promise, the doctors from the medical ship, the passengers from the luxury liner, all of them flooded into the vessel. They were not soldiers. They had no training. But they came anyway, following the Marines, helping where they could, ready to fight with their bare hands if they had to. And watched them come and felt a new kind of fear, something deeper and colder than anything he had experienced before. These were not warriors. These were ordinary people, soft people, people who had probably never hurt anyone in their lives. And they were terrifying. The Marines reached the cargo bay in less than 10 minutes. They found the 300 colonists still sitting on the floor, still holding each other, but now with hope in their eyes instead of despair. They found Captain standing exactly where she had been, watching the door, waiting. And they found Al. The commander stood in the center of the room, alone. His soldiers had surrendered or been captured. His ship was dead in space. His empire's reputation, built over 3,000 years of conquest, had been destroyed in a single afternoon. He was still holding Myra. The lead Marine, a woman named Sergeant Torres, raised her weapon. "Put the child down," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were not. "Now." Al looked at her. He looked at the Marines behind her, their weapons all pointed at him. He looked at the civilians crowding into the room, their faces hard and angry. He looked at Myra's mother, pushing through the crowd, tears running down her face. Slowly, carefully, he bent down and placed the child on the floor. Myra ran. She ran across the cargo bay as fast as her little legs could carry her, still clutching her stuffed rabbit, still crying. Her mother met her halfway, dropping to her knees, wrapping her arms around her daughter, holding her so tight it seemed like she would never let go. The room was silent for a moment. Then someone started crying. Then someone else started laughing. Then everyone was talking at once, hugging each other, celebrating, releasing the fear and tension that had built up over the past hours. Myra was passed from person to person, marine to civilian, stranger to stranger. Everyone wanted to touch her, to make sure she was real, to make sure she was safe. Each person checked her over carefully, looking for injuries, speaking softly to her, making her feel protected. Al watched all of this with his 4 yellow eyes. He did not understand. He could not understand. In his culture, children were valuable property, nothing more. They were raised to be useful to the empire. They were trained and tested and sorted by worth. The weak ones were discarded. But these humans treated this one small child like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Sergeant Torres walked up to him and pointed at the floor. "On your knees, hands behind your head." Al obeyed. He had no choice. He had no power. He had nothing left but his life, and he was not even sure they would let him keep that. But they did. 3 weeks later, Al stood in a human courtroom on a station called New Geneva. He expected to be executed. In his culture, defeated commanders were always killed, usually in painful and public ways. It was how they maintained order. Instead, the humans gave him a trial. They assigned him a lawyer, a young man named David who actually tried to defend him. They let him speak in his own words, explaining why he had done what he did. They listened to witnesses, examined evidence, and followed rules that seemed strange and complicated. And then they did something even stranger. They educated him. Instead of execution, Al was sentenced to what the humans called cultural exchange. He was taken to a facility where he was shown the history of humanity, from their earliest days on their home planet to their current place among the stars. He learned about their wars. They had many of them, terrible conflicts that killed millions. Humans were not peaceful. They were capable of great violence, great cruelty, great destruction. But he also learned about their stories. He watched their ancient myths, tales of heroes who fought monsters to protect children. He read their religious texts, full of rules about caring for the young and the helpless. He studied their laws, which placed the protection of children above almost everything else. He saw their art, paintings of mothers holding babies, songs about fathers and sons, stories about the lengths people would go to save the innocent. "Why?" he asked one day. He was sitting across from Admiral, who had come to see him as part of the educational program. "Why do you care so much about your young? They are small and weak and useless. They cannot work, cannot fight, cannot contribute anything to your society." Admiral was quiet for a long moment. He was old, Al knew, near the end of his natural life. He had children of his own and even great. "Because they are our future," he said finally. "They carry everything we are, everything we have learned, everything we hope to become. When we protect them, we protect the continuation of everything we value." "But they are just individuals," Al said. "One child among billions. What does one child matter?" Admiral smiled. It was a sad smile, full of wisdom and something that looked like pity. "Every child matters," he said. "Every single one. That is what makes us human." He leaned forward, and his eyes became serious. "We are not a peaceful species," he said. "We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. We have committed atrocities that would make your empire look gentle by comparison. But we chose to become better. We chose to build rules and laws and systems to control the darkness inside us. And the protection of children is the foundation of everything we built. It is the one thing that unites all humans, regardless of their nation or religion or politics. Hurt a child, and you will face the full fury of our entire species. Not because we are emotional or weak, but because we understand what we are capable of. and we have chosen to direct that capability toward protecting the innocent." Al thought about this for a long time. He thought about the ships that had come for Myra, the miners and doctors and teachers who had been willing to die for a child they had never met. He thought about the Marines who had stormed his ship with such cold, focused violence. He thought about Captain's smile, the smile of a predator about to strike. "We underestimated you," he said. "Everyone does," Admiral replied, "at first." 6 months later, Al was released. He was given a ship and allowed to return to his empire. The humans did not try to stop him. They did not demand promises or treaties or concessions. They just gave him a message to deliver. When he arrived at the home world, he requested an audience with the High Council. He stood before the leaders of his empire, the rulers of 17 worlds, and he told them everything. He told them about the ships that came from everywhere. He told them about the miners and doctors who were willing to fight. He told them about the cold, efficient violence of the human Marines. And he showed them the recordings. 53 ships surrounding his cruiser, weapons firing, civilians boarding, all for one small child. "We cannot fight them," he said to the Silent Council. "Not because they are stronger than us. Not because they have better weapons or more ships. We cannot fight them because they are willing to sacrifice everything for something we do not even understand." The High Council debated for 3 days. They watched the recordings again and again. They analyzed the human ships, the human tactics, the human response time. They calculated the cost of a war against a species that would fight to the death for a single child. In the end, they made a decision that had never been made in 3,000 years of history. They declared humanity off limits. The order was sent to every ship, every station, every colony in the empire. Human vessels were to be left alone. Human worlds were not to be touched. Any who harmed a human would face punishment from their own people before the humans even arrived. And across the galaxy, in the years that followed, the story spread. Other species heard about what had happened in the outer reaches. They heard about the colony ship and the message and the ships that came from everywhere. They heard about the miners who fought with wrenches and the doctors who were ready to kill. They heard about the child named Myra, who had been saved by an entire species. The story changed as it spread, as stories always do. Details were added, removed, exaggerated. But the core remained the same. A warning passed from species to species, civilization to civilization, generation to generation. You may trade with the humans. You may even talk with them, learn from them, work alongside them. They are soft and emotional and strange, but they can be good friends and useful allies. But never ever harm their children. Because if you do, they will come for you, all of them from everywhere, and nothing in the galaxy will stop them. Nothing at all. Years later, Myra grew up to become a diplomat. She traveled between worlds, helping humans and aliens understand each other. She told her story many times to many different species, always with the same ending. "I do not remember much about that day," she would say, holding the same stuffed rabbit she had clutched as a child. "I was very young. I was very scared, but I remember feeling safe even when the alien was holding me, because I knew somehow that they would come for me." She would smile then, the same smile her mother had worn, the same smile that Captain had shown Commander Al so many years ago. "They always come for us," she would say. "That is what makes us human." And somewhere in the galaxy, on a world far from human space, an old commander named Al heard her words and nodded slowly. He understood now. He finally understood.